Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of my epic Mormon Stories podcast interview with my dear friend Gerardo Sumano. I'm Dr. John DeLynn, and we just spent a good 4 hours with Gerardo talking about his epic Mormon Mexican journey. Gerardo was born and raised in Mexico as a Mormon or as a Latter-day Saint. His dad was a convert to the church. His mom was also a convert to the church, but just talking about his upbringing in Mexico. We talked about him, growing up in the church, doing all the Mormon things from a Mexican perspective, kind of being in a model Mormon Mexican family, his dad in leadership positions, etc. We talked about him in high school and realizing at some point in his childhood that he was gay, and how he reconciled that with his Mormon orthodoxy. We talked about his parents discovering that he was gay and how he dealt with that. Talked about his Mormon mission in Mexico, and that's kind of where we left off. When we left off during part 1, first 4 hours, Gerardo had just been demoted from zone leader and then magically promoted to assistant to the president. But prior to becoming AP on his mission, he had started to learn about some of the problems with the church history, started to learn about Book of Abraham. Of course, he had questions about his own sexuality. And throughout this whole point, there's this theme of compartmentalization where Gerardo, on the one hand, is a true believing Mormon, but on the other hand, because he knows he's gay, and to some degree likes being gay, realizes that at some point he's going to have to break free, come to the U.S. if he can, go to BYU, and eventually possibly leave the church, but maybe as a believing Mormon, just a lot of interesting compartmentalization going on. But this brings us, so we'll come now right back to the story right where we left off, where you've just been made assistant to the president. How many months into your mission?
I think I had like 6 months left.
So 18 months into your mission.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're AP, and you say you were doubling or tripling down.
Yes.
And that's when you realized that you were this was a change in plan.
Yep.
Because once you got made AP, you decided, I need to marry a woman. I need to make the Mormon Orthodox thing work. And that's what high leadership callings can do to people.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Oh, and of course, we've got Kara Burrell here with us. Hey, Kara.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Yep.
Thanks for doing all the production stuff.
No problem.
All right. Yeah. All right, Gerardo, where do we go now?
All right. So I was made AP and I was enjoying it, loving it. And a lot of the mission president would want us as APs to work on our area as much as possible. So we were still baptizing a lot. Baptizing every week was a thing for us. And at the same time, we had to be doing training for missionaries and coming up with strategies on how to help missionaries baptize more people. So as I decided finally that, I got way more converted into the church and decided that I'm going to go back and marry a woman later. At the same time, I just became really strict as a missionary, being an AP, and wanted everyone to be just as strict as me, following the rules. Like, if they don't want to be on their missions, why don't we just send them back?
Oh, man.
There was this one time.
I don't like this, Gerardo.
Yeah, it's bad. But there was this strategy that, when mission presidents are trained by the Quorum of the 12 right before they're sent out for the 3 years mission, they come here and they have this like weeks long training with the Quorum of the 12 and several general authorities. And I think a lot of what they emphasize, and he told us, was that mission presidents should make sure that missionaries stayed in the mission as long as possible. Because when missionaries are sent home, most of them, a very high percentage of them, go inactive.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty big mission of my mission president to keep missionaries in the mission for as long as possible, even if they were breaking the rules pretty hardcore. So yeah, there was a little conflict I feel like there, but I mean, we're still doing good work. I
So
think
he didn't want to send missionaries home that you felt should be sent home.
Yeah, right. Um, and then, so obviously that made a lot of missionaries to not like me in the mission. I made a lot of good friends, like the obedient missionaries who actually baptized and did the good work. I was mostly friends with them, but there was this group of missionaries who absolutely hated me.
I have to note that some of the most homophobic, this has a connection, I promise. Some of the most homophobic humans that have ever lived have been closeted gay Christian pastors who had a lot of self-loathing about their sexuality. And so the way that they dealt with that was to pack it down and swing the other direction and be super strict, super Christian, and super homophobic.
Yep.
Vocally. I wonder if this doubling or tripling down of you saying, I can do this, I'm going to be faithful and follow the Mormon way, whether that was part of your strictness for yourself, which then meant you were imposing that on other people.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to psychoanalyze
yes,
you.
that's exactly what was happening, I think. Yeah. And okay, another interesting story was Elder Bednar was visiting Mexico City. I don't know exactly what for, but it was not to visit the mission, but me and my companion, we got to be at the visitor center where he went and visited the visitor center because the visitor center had just been recently remodeled and reopened. And so he visited there, and then there was like this little meeting with all the sister missionaries from the visitor center who sang for him, and he just shared a few words to us. But it just
Is he a cool dude?
no.
You didn't even pause.
I just was just expecting, I don't know, you're reading the scriptures about the apostles and like how they approached poor people, and they are going preaching people and helping people and just talking to anyone. But I was just very surprised about how they were treating this as a very corporate thing. Like the visitor center was closed. Nobody was able to go in. It's like nobody should know that Elder Bednar is here. And it's super weird for me. It's like this Mexican Mormons, they would be incredibly blessed or feel incredibly honored to be able to see an apostle
of the Lord Jesus Christ, right? Special witness.
Yeah, they see Jesus, they talk to Jesus every once in a while.
That's the belief, right? That's the perception.
Yeah.
And yet he was being aloof or standoffish or secretive.
Yeah, right. Like just this, like, kind of like we were going to take a picture and he's just like, kind of, you're not supposed to hug him or like, like do anything, like ask for pictures just by yourself with him or anything. You don't talk to him. It's just this very weird thing. And that was a little conflicting for me. How that
kind of corporate and standoffish.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was the experience with Elder Bednar. I have my picture right next to him.
You do have it still?
Yeah, I have.
Well, put that in the show notes. Send it to Kara.
Yeah, I think my mom should have it, but I think they have it. Yeah, I'm right there. Anyway, so
I want to see that photo.
So
did he make any harsh or gaffes or harsh statements or mean things?
He did this really interesting thing where he blessed us. He blessed the missionaries that were there. It's like, oh wow, this is pretty cool that he's blessing us to be able to go out. I can't exactly remember what he said, but just baptize and have success and blah blah blah.
Partial superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah. I just felt super privileged. But yeah, anyway. And then I went home with a very, very strong testimony of the church. My dad was on the stake presidency back then, and then I don't know exactly how he did it, but the stake president was my dad was the first counselor, and the stake president was gonna be out of town the week I arrived. So my dad was the one doing the interview to release me.
Your own dad. Mm-hmm. What a proud moment.
Yeah. So it was this very emotional and powerful experience of me sharing with my dad my testimony of the church, what I had learned, my most powerful experiences on my mission, and just crying throughout the whole interview, telling my dad, like, I know I need to marry a woman and follow the church, what like the covenant path, and I know I can do it. And something I told him too was, I don't think this was on any video, this was later, but that maybe I still wanted to come to BYU, and I told him maybe going to BYU would be easier for me to find a woman who would be okay with me having same-sex attraction.
Those exist.
I still marry me.
Okay, wait. Before, just really quickly, it's common for a gay Mormon male missionary to get the impression from however they get it, that if they serve a faithful mission, that when they get home, and Kyle Ashworth talked about this, like being in the airport on the way home, it's like, did Heavenly Father take away my gay feelings? Had anyone ever given you the impression, or did you pick up the expectation that maybe if you served a super faithful mission, that God would take your gay away once you completed your faithful mission?
Yeah, I think in some way I thought that, but I didn't think it was going to be, I didn't think it was like Kyle Ashworth or many other people who thought it was just going to be a switch. I didn't see it that way. I did think that God is going to bless me, and he is going to put in my way a woman who I can fall in love with. And he's going to bless me because I served an honorably faithful mission. And so soon as probably the first day I arrived, I found out that my parents had closed down the family business, lost a lot of money, and were in really bad debt. My dad had lost his full-time job as well, and we were, as a family, in a very bad economical situation. But while I was on my mission, I'm being an AP, I found out that there was the mission president from the Northwest mission was a super rich man from Idaho Falls who was planning on starting a foundation to help Latino return missionaries to come to BYU-Idaho. So I talked to my dad and told him my plan of like, it's going to BYU-Idaho. And because that's where I will be able to find a worthy girl who will be able to be fine with me struggling with this, because I know I'm probably going to still struggle with it at some point.
Being gay.
Yeah. And a Mexican sister is not going to understand this. Like no one talks about this in Mexico. It's just a very taboo topic in the church. I think the idea also came from all the people at Evergreen, they're married to women and they're American, right? So there must be like faithful sisters who are would be okay with it.
And turns out there are.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's actually solid.
Yeah. So, anyway, and my mom asked me to contact David Matheson again and touch base with him. So I did. I immediately got 2 jobs, and that's how I was able to afford the meetings with him.
So you met with David Matheson
After my mission.
After your mission.
Yeah. And we had just
you
a
guys
few.
were tight, man.
We had a few sessions, and where he kind of asked me how my mission went, and we did a little bit. It was weird because I did feel like it was not the same approach as before. As like, I don't know, it just felt different. Like something was off, with him. So I just met with him a few times. Then I later found out that by that point he had already been kind of like realizing that conversion therapy was not working at that point.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got 2 callings. I was a seminary teacher at 6 a.m. Had like 10 students
Where?
in Merida.
Okay.
And I got a calling of the ward mission leader. So I had 2 callings, 2 jobs, going to temple, doing all the Mormon stuff. And I was really sad and depressed in some way. It's like, and I didn't understand what was wrong because I was doing everything. And then in one of the YSA activities, I think it was, I met this girl. This pretty attractive girl. Like, I mean, I'm gay, and I think every gay man will be able to say this. I'm gay, but I can tell when a woman is attractive. So this very good-looking girl I met on the YSA activity, and I think I asked for her number or something like that. Or later, I found out who she was. Or I think I asked my dad who she was, and then my dad told me, and then. Anyway, I ended up contacting her and just started going out on dates. I mean, I think she liked me, and she was a returned missionary too. So we started going on dates, and it was just very uncomfortable. Especially when I started noticing that, because I can go out with my friends, girls, and have no problem with it. I can be alone with one of my girlfriends. I know she's not attracted to me. I know she's not attracted to her. I'm not attracted to her. But here it was different. And I had never experienced this before, where she would want to hold my hand or something like that. And I would just feel really, really, really uncomfortable and not like it. And by that point, I had already applied to BYU-Idaho, and I think I had received the acceptance letter. So I told her, kind of like on our last date, I told her, hey, I received the acceptance letter for BYU-Idaho. And she kind of got like a little upset, kind of like, are you playing with me or what are we doing? And I was like, no, I still don't know if I should go, blah, blah, blah. You know.
What were you feeling?
I think I was genuinely conflicted, but I don't know. It just felt really uncomfortable. But I knew, I mean, this is a pretty attractive girl. It doesn't get better than this.
And did you try to kiss?
So I took her home, and she, when I said bye, she kissed me. And that was horrible.
Really?
Yeah.
Horrible.
For me, like, not like she's a bad kisser,
No.
like the experience. It was yucky for me.
Aversion. You had you experienced aversion.
Yep.
Studying this stuff, we don't think about the fact that there's attraction, but then there's aversion. And those are different things. You can have no attraction all the way to a ton of attraction, but you can also have no aversion to a lot of aversion. And those are actually different things, and they can occur at different levels simultaneously. And not everyone who's gay, lesbian, and or bisexual experiences the same levels of aversion versus attraction. But if, some of the most tragic stories are gay men that marry women that experience a lot of aversion. So when they actually have sex, they weep after sex because it was so awful. And then for others, it's like, oh yeah, we had sex and it worked. I just didn't enjoy it. There's a real big difference between having aversion and not experiencing aversion. And you're saying you did experience aversion.
It's probably one of the most traumatic experience of my life.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry.
Because I'm here returning from my mission, knowing that this is what I'm supposed to do, and feeling that aversion was just horrible. So...
Because you have to be thinking about, can I do this for the rest of my life?
Right.
And more, not just kiss, right?
So I just went back into my car. I dropped her off at her house and went on my car, and I called my best friend he had also just came back from his mission from California, and told him, hey, I'm picking you up right now. I need to talk to someone because I just had a really bad experience. So I picked him up and I told him about it. He just didn't say much, but it was helpful for me to process it and yeah, go through, okay, I'm a very analytical person. I can think of future stuff really easy, and like what are the possibilities what of things that could happen. So pretty quickly after that, I decided, like, no, this is not gonna work. I can't marry a woman. There's no way. I already went through the conversion therapy. I'm meeting with David Matheson. I was thinking it was working. He's telling me it looks like it's working. I already served a mission, and this is bad. This is bad. And what was really probably worked towards my advantage is that I knew what it was supposed to feel like kissing someone that you're attracted to.
Because you had done it.
Right.
Unlike Kyle,
right,
who'd never had the chance to do it. You had done it.
Right. So I had felt what it felt to be attracted. I have a crush on someone or going on dates with someone. I have felt the butterflies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And this was completely the opposite. Yeah. So if I could explain, it probably would be like a super straight man trying to kiss intentionally and romantically a man. That's how it felt to me. Yeah. So I was already accepted to BYU-Idaho. So I was like, well, I guess let's go back to plan A.
Plan A. Back to plan A.
Yeah. And I knew BYU-Idaho was super conservative, so it was going to be way harder to try to be open, or just experimental gay while at BYU-Idaho, probably.
Honor code.
Yeah.
I just have to jump in and say that part of something that's really insidious that we don't think about is Mormon dating culture for teenagers, and then how that affects a potentially gay or lesbian kid. Because gay and lesbian kids, well, first of all, they're probably suppressing their same-sex sexuality, and a lot of them may not even know for sure if they are gay because they're taught to not date seriously at all, let alone with a member of the same sex.
Right.
But then, every single gay Mormon man I've ever interviewed didn't have any romantic experience until after they married a woman, and then later. And it was then that they realized that what they were missing once they finally had some type of romantic experience with someone of the same gender. And but in a Mormon culture, you don't get the chance to do that normal type of experimentation, often not even as a heterosexual teen, let alone a gay one. And so it's just I'm so glad you were able to, I'm glad we're interviewing you, because it just speaks to how crucial it is for teens to have healthy normative teen experiences, gay or straight. And this applies to, the straight Mormon who has low libido, for example, and they don't know that. And then they marry someone, and then they realize they really don't like sex, but now whoever they married is locked into marriage with them for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And it turns out they just don't like sex because there are people that are asexual. Right. And it's not that I'm saying we all need to sleep around with everybody, but I am saying, there's a reason why normal people have healthy, normative dating and or sexual exploration in the teen or early adult years. Because really big decisions ride on that ability to date, court, and even make out. And I'm so sad for all the straight and non-straight Mormon kids that don't have that experience. And I'm so happy that you were able to have that experience, because it probably saved that Mexican woman or anyone else you might, it probably saved you and them and potential children a lot of headache. And that's why the Mormon dating culture, it can be so positive for the church's interests, super unhealthy and against the best interests of some or many of the youth who live under that purity, modesty, law of chastity culture.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So probably a lot of people, I've been trying to answer this throughout the interview, but I keep forgetting. Maybe a lot of people would be wondering why BYU? Why not move out of your house just like my dad did it, right? He moved out of his house. The reason is in Mexico, there is, especially at least in Merida, there's this very strong culture of you don't move out from your house until you're married. So all of my friends from high school, they didn't move out. Most of them are still living with their parents unless they're married. And if they moved out, was to move to Canada or go to another country. So there was not like this option for me of like moving to Mexico City and go to school there. It's like, and for my parents, it would be like, you have the same sex attraction issue and you're going to go to a non-Mormon school. You're going to get lost super fast.
You'll start dating.
Right.
Men
right. So you have to stay home. That was what my dad would have preferred, stay home. And in the last case, like I was able to convince my dad at the beginning that BYU-Idaho was probably going to be the best option for me. Anyway, so if
you didn't go there, it probably would have been really hard.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have been able to survive. I don't know.
Your parents looking over your shoulder, watching your every move, afraid of what you might do. Who are you with? What were you doing?
That's how it was. When those 6 months that I was home, that's how it was, even as a returned missionary.
It's like their job to keep you from falling into the gay clutches of death.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad really wanted me to stay. He looked into several universities there, and one of the most prominent ones, which is pretty expensive, he told me I'll pay for it. And I was like, how are you going to pay for it, Dad? Like we barely have money to eat and pay for the bills. It's like, I'll get a job here and start, because he used to teach there at some point. I'll get a job here, and he really wanted me to stay. But I decided to come here to BYU-Idaho.
And you fulfilled all his worst fears.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't mean to give it away.
Yes.
And more.
What's that?
And more.
Oh.
Probably appearing on this podcast right now.
So I came to BYU-Idaho. It's a new experience. I've never lived. I've been to the U.S. before, but not lived. Definitely different. Different culture, super conservative. Idaho, super cold. I arrived on the winter. Yeah. And I'm from like
Mexico's
paradise.
hot, right?
Yeah.
Beach.
Yeah. Beach, Mexico, like 100 degrees almost the whole year. So yeah.
It's like Alaska. It's like going to North
right.
Pole. Rexford's cold, right?
Yeah.
It's worse than Logan, I hear.
It's super cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Snow most of the year, I think. So what I had to do really fast was get a job, and the foundation helped me find a job, which was good. As an international student, you can only work on campus with a student visa. So I came with a student visa, and I started working on campus as a cleaning toilets at 4 a.m. in the morning. And I mean, I still felt good of not being policed by my parents and being able, I mean, at that point I was not off the rails or anything, but I just felt like I could finally be myself without having someone over my shoulder looking at everything I did.
Felt freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine freedom at BYU in Rexburg?
Cleaning toilets in the morning. That doesn't speak to the homophobia. That is preferable.
Yeah. And so I had that job for the first 2 semesters.
Let me ask you, America's probably never been great with people south of the border you're never great, right?
Yeah.
But it's been particularly bad the past several years, just with how we talk about immigrants and people coming from Mexico. And, I don't know when it's ever been good or happy or positive, but what was it like being Mexican coming to freaking super white Rexburg, Idaho? Like, it's hard to imagine a whiter town than Rexburg, Idaho. Yeah. And how did people treat you great? Did they not treat you so great? What was it like?
I found friends really fast.
So people were nice to you?
Yeah.
That's great.
The one time I felt horrible, like I would say maybe discriminated against or like people looked me down, was when Trump won the election. And just how students would talk about immigrants in front of me, or even at work, they would talk in between each other just about immigrants and how they shouldn't be here and stuff like that. That was really, really hard.
But generally,
it was a good experience. Good. I found good friends. Good. I found this group of friends, and also I came here with my best friend from back home, who had served his mission in California.
You guys roommates?
We came together.
Were you roommates or?
Yeah. So we were roommates the first semester. For the first semester. Yeah.
Good.
We're still friends still today. So yeah. And yeah, this group of friends I met from because of him. They were friends from his mission or people that he had met from his mission and stuff like that. Anyway, I ended up being better friends with them than he was. And one of them was openly gay. Openly gay as like, just he would tell anybody that would ask, I'm gay, but he was not dating around. He was older, probably 26, 27. I don't know, but he was pretty old. He had been in school for like 7 years. He had been on his mission in between, but because of I later found out because of really bad depression, he would just fail semester after semester. He was into a lot of debt. And I was able to see his life and how wrecked it was. Trying to live the Mormon celibate life. Yeah. And that was the option I had left, right? If I was going to stay in the church. It was celibacy because I knew...
You had the aversion.
Yeah. I knew women was not going to work.
And so celibacy looked what to you from this guy?
It was just horrible, and this was really early on at BYU-Idaho when I met him. I knew he had been on a little bit of at some point had a crush on a guy and had kissed a guy and had been kicked out for a few semesters. That also contributed on why he had been there for so long. And was on antidepressants and just this really sad. I mean, he was a good person. I liked him, but just this very sad life. So 27, 28 maybe, and still in school. I don't know. But that really gave me to perspective and like, okay, yeah, maybe celibacy is not gonna work either. So I started having a lot of success at school. Had a 4.0 GPA most of the 4 years of school. And I was able to find a really good job on campus as a graphic designer for the executive team, for which we would work on the projects for the president of the university. I worked there for several semesters, and I was enjoying it. I like graphic design. I like photography. Taking class, I was really liking it. And at the same time, I started dating and going on dates with guys. And
okay, now let's talk about that.
Yeah,
honor code, BYU-Idaho.
Yeah, so there's an underground definitely of gay students who would date around and just do hookups and I mean just the normal apps, Tinder or Grindr, they exist there.
Because this wasn't too long ago, right?
This was 2016.
So 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to be explicit, at BYU-Idaho and probably BYU, most certainly BYU, there are gay Mormon students
Yeah.
that are signed the honor code. They're attending to all public appearances. They look straight and or faithful.
Mm-hmm.
And then behind the scenes, they're on Tinder or Grindr,
Yeah.
hooking up. And when you say hooking up, I mean, do you mean hooking up in all the ways?
But yeah, all the things that like a normal person in university would do happens. And it doesn't just happen with gay people. It happens with straight people. It's not super common, but I had several straight friends who would have sex with girls and then marry in the temple after that. So it's not super unheard of. Mm-hmm. It happens. There's definitely a lot of fear, especially among the gay community or the gay students at BYU-Idaho of being found out by the honor code. So you have to be super careful. Like no one on the apps, no one has the real pictures or like pictures on the, like you have to kind of like make sure that it's actually another student, which I don't think the honor code has ever gone on the apps to
send spies.
Yeah. But there's definitely a lot of fear of being out. While at BYU, you'll see more people that are out and proud. And even when they're maybe dating in the underground, at BYU-Idaho, there's probably a handful of people who are actually out and say to anyone, yeah, I'm gay. Because what happens, at least at BYU-Idaho, is once you come out, you get like a spotlight and your bishop is looking at, like making sure you're not like, he starts interviewing you more, giving you more responsibilities at church. If you're out and then there's a honor code report, the honor code is more likely to believe the report because you're already out. Well, if you're closeted, then first the honor code has to prove that you're actually gay and then prove also that you actually did something gay. Mm-hmm. So there's this big fear as being out. So I was never publicly out, only to like friends and really, really close friends. So people that I felt I could trust. That makes sense.
I would only imagine, I don't know how scared you would have been, but I would imagine if I were in your shoes, I would have been terrified because, BYU will kick a student out for drinking alcohol, smoking, or having sex. But then the Mormon Church is famously homophobic and afraid of and punishing to gay people. Mm-hmm. So there's all that just white U.S. gay students have to deal with at BYU. But like BYU-Idaho is your salvation. So number one, you're coming from a developing country. Mm-hmm. It's your second language. You needed to get away from your parents because it was not going to be good if you stayed there, but you're also on a student visa. And, this is like your one shot to be in America and to get away from your family and to get a U.S. education, which there's probably benefits to that in terms of eventual income, potential.
Right.
And income potential. And so if I were you, I would have been afraid to come out as gay or date any man for fear of being found out and then sent home and having that kind of American dream dashed.
Yeah. I mean, there was the fear, obviously, every time.
But it didn't stop you.
No.
I hope any closeted BYU gay students are taking notes of what to do, how to get through it.
I do feel like the fear among the gay students is way... They take it a lot more seriously than probably they should. If you're smart about it, most people don't get caught. I mean, from all the students that I met, a lot of gay people at BYU-Idaho, and only know of maybe 2 that were caught by the honor code, and only 1 was actually convicted or kicked out, or however you want to call it. Because the honor code has to prove to you that you actually did something So the only way it would happen is if the other gay person or the other person that you're doing something with goes and confesses. So that's probably the
Then they'll
major
be
fear.
condemning themselves if they do that.
Yeah, they would.
Why would they do
They
that?
would feel bad. They like, for example, there's a lot of experiment. I know there's a lot of students, bisexual students who may sometimes have girlfriends, and then they get on Grindr or on Tinder to find guys and experiment stuff. So if one of those guys ever did stuff with you and then feels bad and wants to repent because he's gonna marry his girlfriend, then you're screwed if he gives your name. But that only happens if you actually give your real name. If
On Grindr.
on Grindr or Tinder or in the actual date.
Yeah.
Usually you don't.
So use a fake name?
I don't think I
Sometimes.
did. I don't think I did,
Others
but
do.
I would see other people like not give their name, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I just have to say, historically in the gay community, as I understand it, this has led to this sort of like forcing people to live in the closet and in the dark and in the shadows. I've heard stories about bathroom stalls at BYU or truck stops or rest stops, just driving behavior into dark, seedy places.
Yep.
That's not good for anyone. It's not good for
No.
the students. It's not good for, there's nothing good about it. It drives maybe unhealthy
and there's the fear of
behaviors.
STDs too.
STIs, yeah.
STIs, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Secret and shame is always,
And then how do you get tested?
yeah.
Because you are at BYU-Idaho with the student. If you have the student health plan, the only hospital you can go to is the
Student center.
the student center.
Clinic, yeah.
Yeah, and what are you gonna go say? Like, hey, I want to get an STI test.
I sat on a really dirty toilet at a truck stop. Trust me, it wasn't gay sex or anything.
Well, there is Planned Parenthood. I don't know if
Is there one in Rexburg?
I don't know if Rexburg has
don't
a
know.
Planned Parenthood.
I think they do. Yeah.
That would be an option. Thank goodness for Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, BYU. If there's any BYU students listening, if you need an STI test, go to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
Better
Shout out
safe
to
than
Planned
sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, what else about so definitely not a lot of people out. And
Were you guys ever talking about like the men you dated? Like, oh, do you still believe, or did you serve a mission? And how do you reconcile the fact that you and I are making out right now with the fact that you believe the church is true? And did you ever have talks about beliefs and that sort of thing?
most of the time the hookups, it's like a hookup and that's it. Like,
So it's shallow.
it's super shallow.
You don't want to talk. That's
Yeah.
another thing that's unhealthy is you're not able to just like date and talk and get to know each other and, then things progress or not. It's like tell them as little as possible, get in, get out, metaphorically speaking, and, just get your needs met. But there's no emotional intimacy.
Yeah.
There might be some sexual intimacy. That's super awful.
Yeah.
I think. I don't mean to project.
Yeah,
but
no, yeah. And most of the time I would say it's mostly makeouts that happen, honestly. But that's most of the time what happens.
Meaning it doesn't go too far
Yeah,
beyond.
yeah,
It's not.
yeah. But anyway, so, yeah. But I did go on dates with a couple people, and yeah, the topic does come up. And I did really want someone who believed in the church. Like if I was gonna date someone, I probably wanted someone who believed. I mean, I knew I was gonna go to the celestial kingdom, but I still believed it.
There's this perception among straight people, especially secular or ex-religious. It's like, dude, if you're gay, all your religious beliefs should evaporate. They act as though just being gay means being gay and Mormon means you lose the Mormon. Because what gay person, given the homophobia and the treatment of LGBT people in the church, that would be like evidence that the church was false. Therefore, you would just immediately all your Mormon beliefs would just evaporate.
Right.
Because obviously the church is a fraud if they're so awful to gay people. But that's not. Tell us why that might not be the case.
Well, Yeah, I think they're two separate things. Being a lot of it has to do with how the church grooms you into thinking that this is a weakness. This is not who you are, and you are just giving up. And I mean, for me, I just felt the weakness is too strong. I just can't make it work. I guess I don't know. It's just so I still was able to keep my beliefs. Believing at the same time I was broken, at the same time I'm going to the celestial kingdom, but at the same time, well, I think this is the best path for me to be happy, at least on this life.
And I sometimes say just being gay doesn't mean if you're raised in a high demand religion that your beliefs evaporate.
Yeah.
Or evaporate. Beliefs are super resilient, especially in the context of a high demand religion. So yeah, it's fallacious thinking that, oh, you're gay, so just leave the church and leave it behind. Go to some other faith. It's just like with the straight person.
Especially when you grew up super orthodox,
Yeah.
right? And when you were raised in the church since a child and you went on a mission and had all those experiences.
You've been conditioned just like everybody else.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was liking it. I think I liked it. It was hard not being able to be out, but it was as good as I had ever experienced like being myself, right? Because at home I had to pretend anyway. And here it was kind of the same, but at the same time going to classes and studying what I liked, what I wanted to study.
What are the pluses and minuses of being in the United States as somebody raised in Mexico? Was it much different? Was it pretty much the same? Was it like way cooler, food-wise, culture-wise, just the environment?
Yeah, it's just a lot. It's a lot different. Like here in the U.S., I was able to go to school and pay for my own bills. Like my parents never really paid for much of my stuff. I don't, if anything, maybe my health insurance in 1 or 2 semesters, they helped, but
Pesos don't go a long way in the U.S., right? Because of the conversion rates.
Yeah. So the fact that I was able to work and pay for my own bills, that's something that wouldn't be a thing in Mexico.
Even in Mexico, with pesos.
Yeah. Even in Mexico with pesos. Yeah.
Yeah.
So none of my friends back home could have a job that could support them. So they would have to still live with their parents.
Home, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. And have everything paid for. So.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a big thing here. Like here you can work at McDonald's and if you live by yourself and rent a room and you can still travel and do stuff. In Mexico, you with the minimum wage, you do nothing. You barely survived, you know?
What about like standard of living? Is it different, similar?
What do you mean? Can you give me?
Well, sometimes there's this impression of like, oh, it's developing world. It's dirty or unclean or impoverished or like not as nice or dirt floors or, you know.
I didn't see much difference. Like you've heard my story. I grew up in a pretty well-off family. And most of my friends are pretty well off as well.
So wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the university was huge for me. Like I'd never seen a university that big and buildings were huge and pretty super nice. Even the best paid universities there don't look like that. But yeah, it was never like, oh my gosh, this is so much better.
Okay.
But I mean, that's pretty cool that with a minimum wage, you can have fun, you know, like, and live all right.
What about missing the food, the culture, the music, your friends, and also being a person of color in a place that's super white?
Yeah.
Just the cultural differences and you being transported to a place totally outside of your host culture.
I did miss my home in some ways, but I love American culture. I don't know culture, but I just like America and just as much as I love Mexico. So I did miss it, but I still enjoyed, like, I wouldn't be like, oh, I want to go back, you know, especially because I knew that my career, if I studied there, I would be making nothing right? If at least at a university in the U.S., if I had to go back and maybe I would be easier to get a job at a bigger company in Mexico City or something that could at least make me a lot more money, right? Because of the career I chose.
Yeah.
So that was big for me.
Yeah.
But no, I never was like, oh, maybe. Now that I think about it, when I first arrived, and I started seeing all the expenses, how much I had to pay for health insurance, and how much food costs, and how much rent was, I was very overwhelmed. And I called my mom, and I said, I think I'll have to go back. There's no way I'll be able to afford this. But I think she talked to me, and I ended up deciding to stay. And yeah, it worked. At the end, it worked.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was hard. I was making minimum wage and had to be careful on like what I ate and where I spent my money. But as I got better jobs and later on, it just started changing a little bit. I never had a car. I would not be able to afford a car, for example, but I live very close to, like, all the houses or the student housings are around the university. So you just walk. It's a walking distance from school. So that was not really a problem. And I would always have a roommate that had a car, so they would drive me grocery shopping and stuff. That's
nice. What about like the apostles coming to give devotionals and the religious education at BYU and going to the wards, and how is it religiously for you as a BYU student?
I honestly felt it's boring.
What?
I just felt like it was boring.
What do you mean?
I still believed in the church, but there's just this thing about the church in Mexico that makes you feel something. When you go to a testimony meeting in Mexico, there's just this thing. I don't know if it's how people talk or if it's just because it's my native language, but just here it's very monotone and just like boring. Testimony meetings are like stale. But I remember when I would go on vacations home, I would always feel like this excitement on the church again that I didn't feel at BYU-Idaho.
Interesting.
Yeah. So even my religious classes, I would not really pay attention. I would just do enough to get by and get the grade. I didn't really go to devotionals. Just not a lot into it, but I still believed.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's go to where I met Zach.
Yeah, so this is the big deal. This is going to answer the question: how do two BYU male students get married while they're BYU students? So this will be a short for sure.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I was on Tinder. It was January.
I was on Tinder. That's how it starts.
And I matched with this guy his name was Zach.
What year?
2018, January 2018.
3 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was exactly in the middle of my school, right? I had done 2 years. I had 2 years left. And I matched with him. We started talking, just really awkward conversation, and be like, okay, do you want to go? I think I asked him out or something. And he said yes. And I said, okay, can you pick me up? Because I don't have a car. It's like, yeah. Anyway, he ends up picking me up and we decided to go out to the movies and maybe do dinner before. And we just got along really well. Really, I was super attracted to him on the first date and went to the movie theater. And then we just went home. And he dropped me off home, and we just kept talking after that, and kept going. We saw each other every day.
Was Zach a return missionary?
Yep.
He's from Idaho, right?
Idaho Falls. Yeah, Idaho Falls, return missionary from Germany. One of the first things he told me was that he had just recently gone through a disciplinary experience. So he had a disciplinary council with the bishop because of dating a guy. And he had gone through the process. I don't remember if it was 6 months or something like that, where he couldn't take the sacrament.
Disfellowship.
Yeah, and he had. I don't think he was disfellowship. What's the one? Probation. And then he had just gained back his rights, or.
And then you were his backsliding.
Yeah, I remember feeling super bad. I told him, like, am I just corrupting you? This is bad.
What did he say?
And he's like, no, I like.
Feels good.
It feels good. And he later told me that the reason why he moved to BYU-Idaho, because he was commuting before. He was going to BYU-Idaho, but he was living with his parents. But he finally decided to move to BYU-Idaho. Pretty much the same reason, to get away from his parents.
Just like you.
Who knew BYU-Idaho was a gay mecca? Wow.
Who knew?
It's
If you're gay, go to one of the BYUs. Find your love. Find your soulmate.
It doesn't work out that well for everyone. I do know a lot of couples though at BYU-Idaho right now, and after that met at BYU-Idaho. Anyway, gay couples. And one of the first things that we talked about was, okay, what are your stances on the church? And we both agreed, okay, we believe that the Book of Mormon is true. And we're probably going to go to the celestial kingdom. Maybe the church has it wrong. At that point, I was like, maybe the church has it wrong on the gay issue, but who knows? But we still believe. And that was important for him because the first boyfriend he had for the one that he went through probation for was ex-Mormon. And he had hated the experience of dating an ex-Mormon. And constantly attacking the church. But he still kind of believed and living with very orthodox Idaho Falls parents. Anyway, so
that is really fascinating. This idea of like a gay faithful Mormon who doesn't want to be around ex-Mormons because they're scary, but we can't be fully orthodox and temple recommend worthy. So we got to find this middle ground of we could date each other, but let's be super positive and faithful about the church. That's a really interesting kind of liminal state. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You lived it. So I'm just like.
Yeah.
Conditioning, man.
Also, I forgot to say this, but when I arrived to BYU-Idaho, my parents were grilling me and asking me, are you going on dates with girls? And what's going on with that? That was your whole point of going there. How is that going?
Oh, man.
And at some point, I just got tired of it. And I told them, like, you know what? Like, this same-sex attraction, it didn't go away. And I'm not going to date girls.
Oh, my gosh. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So stop just asking me because I'm not going to date girls.
Were you like
That's
mad?
what I told them. Yeah. I think they were upset.
How did they respond?
They were sad. They were upset. And at some point, one of the conversations I had with my mom was, I told her, hypothetically, what would you do if for some reason I stopped believing in the church? And by this point, I still believe. So I don't know where did this come from? But at one point, I stopped believing in the church, just like Dad left Catholicism. Let's imagine that I find out that Mormonism isn't true. I leave and then marry someone of my same sex. What would you do? And my mom responded, well, if you left the church, that would mean that you wouldn't want to be my son in the afterlife. So I wouldn't want you to be my son during this life. So I would have no interest of you being my son in this life. Yeah.
What was that like?
It was horrible. I felt so bad. And I really got upset at her, and we stopped talking for like 3 or 4 months. We didn't talk at all. I didn't talk to my parents. But so when I started dating Zach, I already knew what would be coming from my parents, you know? And at some point when I would be out finally, I knew my parents would not be okay with it at all. After a few months of stopped talking to my mom, we just started talking again little by little. And Yeah. But still, we wouldn't talk about the gay subject, and we wouldn't talk about dating girls. So that was the we would still talk, but not about those things. So Zach and I had a really good dating experience. Zach had I don't know if he will mind me saying this, but he had a lot of insecurities that came from his childhood growing up gay and maybe not being accepted by a lot of people. By he was not out to most of his
He
family.
would not have had your high school experience in Idaho Falls.
Right.
As a Mormon kid in Idaho.
Yeah.
In rural Idaho.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he must have had a very hard upbringing, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Really hard. Yeah, pretty hard. And for him, he didn't really accept he was gay until even after his mission. But still, the thought in the back of his mind, he had a hard mission too. Depression during his mission. He saw a therapist during his mission. But I mean, to me, he was just like I don't know. A lot of those issues didn't exist anymore. But there was this probably the hardest part of dating him or dating what was that maybe he still had some insecurities, right, of not being accepted by his parents and stuff like that. But overall, our experience was good to a point because we had to hide it. We couldn't be out and hold hands in the street or do anything outside. We try to be super careful. And even coming, sometimes we took trips to Salt Lake. Even coming here, we would be careful of not holding hands in public. Because what if I had been a TA, so I had a lot of students who knew me. And what if in one of these trips to Salt Lake, we would find like a student who knew me from being their TA and sees me holding my boyfriend's hand. So we would be really careful even when we were out of Rexburg. And that was hard. The fact that we had to keep the secret from our parents for him was really, really hard because he had a really close relationship with his parents and his extended family. And after 6 months of dating, I was gonna come to Mexico. I was gonna go to Mexico to visit my family, just like normally for a summer. And I told him, "Hey, do you want to come?" And he said, "Yes, I'll go." And he was still a little nervous. So, I mean, I just met this guy 6 months ago, and we're already going to meet his parents in Mexico. We invited another friend too, just to make sure that my parents wouldn't be super suspicious. Yeah, because I knew my parents would be what would be the first thing they thought, right? Yeah, so we ended up going to Mexico, and while we were there, we the first days we stayed at Playa del Carmen at a Airbnb, and then the last days we went back to Merida and stayed at my parents for a few more days, and then we came back. While we were in Cancun, Playa del Carmen, he proposed.
Aww.
Yeah, we had been talking about marriage. You know, it was a topic that we would talk. And
planning which temple you're going to get married in or not. Wait, sorry, I forgot. Trish doesn't allow that.
Yeah, it was really cute. We were at this beach, and we were with our friend who had come with us, and another friend from Merida who had been with us in Cancun, and he had told my friends that he was gonna propose. So we waited on the beach until sunset, and I really wanted to go home because we had to take this boat or ferry because we were in an island to go back to mainland. So I really wanted to go because I had still to drive to the Airbnb. And he was like, "No, let's wait for sunset because I want to take pictures." And I was like, "Oh no, I want to go." he kept pushing, and I was like, okay, fine, let's wait. So we waited sunset, and then we were walking. To go take the ferry back to mainland, and he stopped and said, okay, let's take a picture here. And we were standing right next to each other, and my friend was recording, and he just got on one knee and asked me if I want to be his husband.
You still have the video of that?
Yeah, it should be there somewhere. Yeah.
Splice that in. You should splice that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really cute. And I said yes.
You said yes?
Yes.
You can take the Mormon out of the boy out of the Mormon, but not the Mormon out of the boy. Right?
Have you not been paying attention the last 6 hours? He's gay, John.
And Mormon.
There's this
But I'm talking about the Mormon
said
part,
yes.
not the gay part. Like
I know.
a quick courtship. That's a pretty quick courtship.
true.
yeah, super quick, 6 months.
Yeah.
And
But very Mormon.
the cute thing about the whole experience was that he had a ring that his grandpa had given him, and he wanted that one to be the ring that he would propose with. But he couldn't find. We were gonna go on the trip, and he had thought about proposing there, but he couldn't find it. He couldn't find the ring. He didn't tell me any of this until later. And then once we were in Cancun, he was just taking these things out of the bag, and he found the ring in that backpack. So that's when he decided, okay, this is it. I gotta propose. The ring is here.
And I have to ask, like, I can't imagine that many times in the history of the world, two believing BYU students, that it occurred to them that they should propose and get married as believing BYU students. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I can see hookups happening or gay men or women experimenting at BYU, but like, where in the world would one or two believing BYU students come up with the idea that they're going to get same-sex married in Rexburg, of all places? Like, what made you even think that was a possibility?
I think the idea by that point was maybe we're getting married after I graduated. I think that was the initial idea. I can't remember exactly.
And this was 2018?
2018, yeah.
That's 3 years after
August.
same-sex marriage was legalized across the country. Yeah. I mean, that's a big difference, right? This is relatively recent. This is 3 years after it's legalized nationwide. I mean, I'm sure you're not the only ones, but I'm guessing you won't be the last,
Mm-hmm.
because it's becoming very, very common.
Yeah. But
still, you probably knew it had never been done before, probably, right?
Probably, yeah.
You were doing something different.
Super different.
Were you living together as roommates at this time?
At that point, no.
Okay.
I want to hear that story. Well, when you're ready.
Yeah. So
you get engaged.
Yeah. Something that's hard is like after he proposed, then after a couple of days, we went back to my house and stayed there
with your parents.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell them I was engaged. Yeah.
What was hard about that?
Well, I don't think at the time it's super hard, but just right now thinking about it, it's like these moments that are just normal and of anyone's experience in their life. Like any Mormon heterosexual person, like they're happy when they're engaged and they post their pictures and they tell everyone, and their parents and the families are happy for them. And I was here seeing my parents who live in another country, and I have my fiance right there with me, and I can't tell them that we're engaged. And a lot of it had to do with the fear of how they would react. I mean, what my mom had said at some point, and also the fear that my parents could potentially tell on me and get me out of BYU-Idaho, right?
Things like that do happen.
Yeah. Oh, I think it would have happened if I had told them at that
Parents
point.
would have called BYU-Idaho.
Yeah, at that point. Yeah. And the same for his parents. The same thing. You're going to tell them. And so we came back and we moved into an apartment, and we had separate rooms. We each had a room, and we were living with 4 other guys at the same time.
Okay, well, I want to hear that conversation. Like, wait, what if we move in together? You know, you're engaged.
I think we had already been planning on moving to the same apartment.
How'd that conversation go? Let's move in together.
Yeah, just like, I mean, we're dating. Let's just move in together.
Take that, BYU housing, trying to keep people apart.
Take that honor code.
Yeah. Because that's a huge deal at BYU. Like, nobody of a different sex over past 10 p.m. or whatever. Like,
yeah, not if you're gay.
Yeah.
keep it on the DL.
So we moved into, I mean, again, it was separate rooms, but we were in the same apartment, and it's good. It's great. At some point, and then.
But you had to be discreet.
Yeah. Super careful because we have 4 other roommates.
And they didn't know what was going on.
No, they didn't know. We're engaged, dude.
And you're keeping it from your roommates.
Yeah. Yeah. And by that point, I had gotten a really good job with, so the student visa allows you to get a job related to your field of study, kind of like an internship outside of school. You have to prove that it is related to your career, and you had to be taken certain classes to be able to be approved for this work permit. So I was able to find this job. Well, not find this job. Like, I was recruited because of being the TA for that teacher, recruited by a really big company in Idaho Falls to be on their photography department.
I just have to say, can any of you imagine moving to a foreign country where the country you move to is your second language, and going to university and excelling? Like, I did 2 years of Spanish on my mission. I couldn't have gone to a Spanish speaking university and learned, let alone excelled. And that's just one of many testimonies of the fact that Gerardo is brilliant. So I just had to say that.
Immigrants, they get the job done.
There were so many things.
That's right.
On our relationship in our time as being dating Zach that just fit together so many times that we didn't get caught, that we were probably should have been caught, or not like having sex or anything, but just like, I don't know, sometimes we forgot to be careful outside in the car when we were driving, and then if there was this big truck, right, that they could like look over and see that we were holding hands in the car, just stuff like that. Just a lot of things just fit and happened. I don't know. We thought we were being blessed by God or something. I don't know.
For your wickedness.
This was meant to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so then we lived there for a few months in the semester, and then weeks before we were about to move, our bishop.
And you never violated the honor code.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you did.
Weeks before we moved in to that apartment complex, because each apartment complex and by sections we have different bishops, right? So I think it was a couple weeks before we moved into the new apartment. We were called by our bishop that the bishop wanted to see us
together.
No, well, he texted the secretary texted me and texted him. And at the beginning, I was like, "There's no way this is gonna be about us being gay." Like we, who could have seen anything? Nothing happened. Like, it's not like I don't know. Like, we're not being stupid and we're not doing super bad stuff. I don't know. So we were called in, and it was going to be Zach first, but for some reason I said maybe I should go first. So I asked the bishop if I could go first. I went first. and Zach's interview was gonna be after me, but like there was gonna be a 30-minute, 20-minute in between that. So he was not at the chapel. So I went in, and the bishop asked me, so how is your church attendance? And I'm like, it's good. We were really careful of going every Sunday to make sure not to like bring any red flags, right?
Or rainbow flags.
Right. So I told him it's good. And he's like, here I have this report from the Elders Quorum president. It says like, you haven't been attending your Elders Quorum meetings. And I was like, no, I can call him and I can tell him that we've been there. I know we've been there, or I've been there. So then the bishop changes the subject and says, so I've had this report, and he's like, and please forgive me, this is completely like wrong, but I just have to ask you because he came to me and I have to ask. So I'm really sorry that I have to ask this, but I had this report of a girl from another stake here at BYU-Idaho talked to her stake president, and the stake president called our stake president, and the stake president called me, that you and your roommate Zach are in a relationship.
Now that's the Rexburg I'm familiar with. That's the BYU experience.
Yeah, freaking narc, man.
Till this day, I don't know. Till this day, we can't figure out who
narked.
told on us.
Yeah.
Like, because we were really careful, like seriously, and yeah. So I don't know.
So what'd you say?
Again, I have this brain that thinks really fast on like the possible outcomes. Mm-hmm. So I was really fast able to think my response. And I said, no, Bishop, I'm really good friends with Zach. And Zach is like, he is a little bit feminine. So
You threw Zach under the
bus. So here's
I love sports.
Okay, I'll tell you what went through my mind and why I did that. I said, Zach, he's a little bit feminine, and I could see why someone would think that.
All the while, Zach's in a different interview saying the same things about you. No. Prisoner against prisoner. Oh my gosh.
Prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah.
Well, Zach was going to go after me, so I knew I could tell Zach what I told the bishop.
This is great.
I said, but yeah, Bishop, I'm really worried. Like, who could have said this? I just can't think of anything else. And I said, Bishop, I'm really worried because we're about to move into a new apartment together. And what are people going to say? Should I cancel my contract? What Bishop, what do you recommend? So the bishop was like, oh, no. I don't think you have to cancel your contract. I think you'll be fine. There's always this jealous, young, sisters who go and report men because of like this is a very common thing for fake reports. So I don't think you have to worry about it that much.
Why are you covering your face, Karen?
I'm like crying. I'm laughing so hard. Like Bishop came around for you. He was like, you know what? There are some dumb bitches around here. They're always. I got called gay when I was at BYU-Idaho. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry to bring you in here. Be on your way, brother. Like he came around. He was on the level by the end. He didn't want you to waste that money with your contract.
You want him over, Gerardo? That's so awesome. He's not fighting for you. He's like throwing the women under the bus. So you throw Zach under the bus, so he throws BYU co-eds under the bus.
There's just these chatty broads around town. I love it. He was on the level at the end. Gosh.
So, and then I tell him, like, Bishop, I know, and I'm gonna make sure to talk to the Elders Quorum president and clarify this thing because I always come on Sundays. I love coming out to Elders Quorum, yeah, I'll try to be more careful on this. And
Do I need to mute your mic, John? You need to get out of control. We're trying to move on with the story, but I just can't get over this.
Stories.
That like so much trauma around the gay Mormon experience. Finally, we get like a funny story. We're like, you're a smart man, Gerardo. All of this lying to bishops has come in handy.
Mexican mob, gay Mormon Mexican mobster.
Literally.
The Godfather is Gerardo.
Stone cold sober, able to just lie through any interview.
Because I was thinking, like, what proof do they have? Like, do they have a picture? There's no way they have a picture or a video. And in the back of my mind, I was like, to make our story more credible, one of us has to say we're gay. Otherwise, if we both say we're straight, it's not going to be as believable if at least one of us say we're gay. And I was also thinking, like, if this bishop talks to the next bishop about this, we may get in trouble later. So I gotta tell this bishop that I'm moving wards, and that I'm worried about moving in with him and ask him if I should cancel my contract. So to make sure he tells me, no, you don't have to cancel my contract. And then later down the road, I can say, well, the bishop told me not to cancel my contract.
Wow. You're a chess player, man.
Literally, this is prisoner's dilemma. Like thinking at lightning speed here.
I'm impressed.
I am
Gerardo.
so impressed.
I'm even more impressed. And you're freaking lying your socks off to your bishop. But you've got plenty of practice with that by then.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to tell my bishop I think my fiance is gay.
So then I get out and I call Zach on the phone, like, super fast. And I'm like, okay, Zach, here's what happened. The bishop told me this, and I told him, you are feminist, so you will have to go in and tell him that you're gay. You'll have to tell him.
I love how this happens in like the fastest phone call of all time. You know that secret that we've been hiding forever? Really quick, I gotta tell you what just happened. Run in there, go admit that you're gay. The secret that you've been repressing forever. Trust me, I don't have time to explain.
Zach, you outed Zach.
Well, the thing is, so here's the other thing that I thought. Zach is already out with his bishop in Idaho Falls. So if those bishops ever talk, like, Zach can't say I'm straight because he has been in probation for being gay. So I told him, you gotta tell the bishop that you're gay and just cry or give an act and say, I really want to change and I've been through probation. And Zach, Gerardo and I were just really good friends, and that's it.
Please let me live with my friend Gerardo. Not fiance, just let me live with my friend Gerardo.
What did Zach say?
Yeah, I'm
Zach
dying
said,
to know.
okay, that sounds like a good plan. So he went in, and the bishop asked him pretty much the same thing, and I think he said he cried a little and told him, yeah, Bishop, I'm gay, and I've struggled with this unwanted sex, same-sex attraction, but I'm working through it.
Gerardo's really helping.
That's when those gay cuddling parties came in. He's like, I learned this technique called a gay cuddling party. I'm gonna try it out with my roommate. Maybe I won't.
Me.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me be with Gerardo.
Yeah.
I don't think the bishop really understood that we were gonna live together alone by ourselves in the next.
Oh, okay.
Anyway. But
Don't ask, don't tell.
the bishop said, well, I know this really good therapist who helps people with unwanted same-sex attraction, and because I know you can marry a woman, and Zach was like, okay, yeah, it's fine, okay, good, yeah, we'll talk about it. That was it.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Play it cool. Play it
Here's
cool.
where the hard part played out, is that Zach, I don't know, I can't remember exactly why, but he decided to tell his mom. what had happened, that the bishop had called him in and asked him if he was gay and if he was dating me. And his mom was outraged. She was like, "Give me your bishop's phone. This is outrageous. How could he ask something like that?"
Why?
His mom had asked him, I think, before if we were dating, and he had said no. And his mom thought that I was straight. His mom, and they knew me because I think I had gone through his house. He lived in Idaho Falls for a couple of times for dinner on Sundays. So and also he had been the one not going to all the meetings because sometimes there had been holidays where he had gone with his family to Island Park and stuff like that.
Missionary farewell.
Yeah, so the bishop really made him feel bad for that and told him like, no, if you're in Island Park, you have to drive to Rexburg and come to your meetings.
So dumb.
So he told her that to his mom. His mom got really upset at that. I was like, this is outrageous. They're pretty orthodox, but still thought it's pretty. And Zach didn't end up giving her the bishop's phone number, but his mom was really mad. But can you imagine how that played out later when she found out that we were actually dating?
They lied.
Yeah.
You had lied to her. That's not a good way to start a marriage, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, we're laughing, and I'm sorry, that's the most I've ever laughed on a Mormon Stories podcast episode. But it's just like, I mean, there's some cosmic justice in you guys being able to do. I love this story. It's one of my favorite stories in the history of Mormon Stories because it's just cosmic justice that you guys were, just able to have this great relationship in a BYU context when everything about BYU is set up to stomp out anything like what you guys were, and you were able to do it and enjoy it and have a good time. I just love it. It should be its own movie at some point. But we shouldn't be laughing, but it's just, I love it. I love the story.
Yeah.
But we're laughing. There's this idea of privilege that I learned about getting my PhD, but few of us know what it's like to have to always walk around in fear of being found out, having to hide everything about you, and then having to hide things that are most sacred and special and beautiful. All that you're having to hide all the time, always being worried you'll find out. And it's not just being worried you'll find out. You could have years of your education, be thrown away in an instant because so much of BYU course credit doesn't transfer to other universities. BYU is going to make it hard for you to transfer. All that money wasted, all that time wasted, really serious stakes. And so that's all in jeopardy if all this gets found out. And so it's actually not funny. It's kind of dark humor.
Yeah.
But because what you guys were living under is really unjust and unhealthy and inhumane. It's inhumane.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I didn't live it, but
it was really hard for us right after that experience because we were like, who could it have been? Who told on us?
Yeah.
And
what if it happens
double
again?
down on being careful, right? And being fearful of anyone finding out. And now we're living together. That's even worse.
And just like with your engagement with your parents, instead of it being this beautiful thing that you're able to share with them and they can celebrate with you, you guys finding each other and loving each other and moving in and having this early beautiful courtship, it's tainted. It has to be tainted on some level by the fact that, number one, you have to be secret and private about it. And then number two, there's so much at risk if somebody finds out again. That's just awful. It's not funny.
At that point, I think it was then when we got really nervous, especially me, and we started looking into maybe transferring to another university, to UVU. The main issue was that as an international student, when you're an international student, you have each university makes an estimate of how much a whole year of school, tuition, food, housing, transportation, books, everything is going to cost, and they make up this number. And I think for UVU, it was $27,000. So to be able to transfer as an international student from BYU-Idaho to UVU, you have to prove that you have in the bank $27,000. And that was unimaginable, like at that time. at that point. So we were under a lot of stress for a long time about not, like, we were trapped, like, because I only had 1 year left, and he was still going to the plan at the end was that he was going to finish his associates in general studies, and then around the same time I was going to graduate with my bachelor's. But yeah, that was the main issue. And not only you have to prove that you have that money in the bank, you have to deposit full tuition for a whole year just in one sitting.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I don't know, I can't remember how it's at UVU, but at BYU Provo, you can't use that deposit until your last year of school.
Mm-hmm. They don't want to lose the money. We've got about an hour left, and there's two things I really want to hear about at least. One is your marriage, which is probably bittersweet.
It's pretty soon.
And then I want to hear about, at some point, you're reaching out to me and telling me about you and Zach.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was before or after your marriage, but I want to hear about your faith crisis. And you're one of the most well-read people I know for your age about Mormon church truth claims. I don't want to give that short shrift. So anyway.
Okay, we'll go.
Yeah.
We'll go fast here. So we moved in, and then January came. January is my birthday, so we went to Vegas to celebrate my birthday. And on our way back, we were driving. It's a 9-hour drive back to Rexburg, and he was driving. I was on my phone, and I saw this article of the endowment ceremony changing. It's like, what's that about? Big changes on the temple ceremony.
Like with the washings and anointings, or
it was a change about the female, female not having to hearken unto their husbands and not putting their veils on their face anymore. It's like, what is this about? So then I just started researching about it, just right there on our trip back, and I was like, I wonder, okay, this has changed. I kind of knew already that endowment ceremonies had changed, but I don't know. It was just different this time, knowing that in my lifetime, a big change had happened. So then I was like, okay, I wonder what the homosexual doctrine in the church has changed, the doctrine about homosexuality. So I just started looking and found out about electroshock therapy and what leaders were teaching in the past about homosexuality and how it contrasted completely. Mormon and Gay website had been out already. So I kind of noticed that there was a shift away from what I knew Evergreen was. I kind of tried to show that to my parents. Like, look, the church is changing. At some point I tried that. My parents kind of like still, they didn't really want to listen. They were rooted on this Evergreen ideas, but just seeing how much the church had changed its teachings on homosexuality was pretty impactful. So, and then I just started playing. I found Mormon Stories, and
had you ever heard of Mormon Stories being bad or dangerous?
No.
So you didn't have the poisoning of the well.
No, I think what happened was, I mean, this is on our drive back, this 9 hours, right? And I remembered watching on my mission this video of a former mission president talking about his son being in a same-sex marriage. So I looked for it and I found it and just started playing it. And I just started playing Mormon Stories after Mormon Stories after Mormon Stories. And it was kind of like a faith crisis, a 9-hour trip with faith crisis included.
Do you remember some of the episodes you were listening to? Or?
I can't remember. I remember the Broadshaw one for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple about history.
Yeah.
Maybe Michael Quinn, I think. And so we're both like, okay, what the church may not be true after all. And we went back and I was super upset that the fact that there was things about church history and doctrine that had changed that I had no idea about. So I would go to the library, BYU-Idaho library, and find Dan Vogel's books and what's his name?
Grant Palmer.
Grant Palmer's books and Sandra Tanner's books, and like they were there on the BYU-Idaho library.
Wow.
And
good for them.
Yeah, we just take the polygamy one, Todd Compton
and Sacred Loneliness.
Yeah, would check them out and take them home and just read them. I didn't read them the whole thing, but I would like skim through them and learn new things and listen to Mormon stories during class, like sometimes during class, sometimes in between classes at night. I was just binge watching Mormon Stories episodes, and that was the time when you were coming up with Dan Vogel's episodes and all this
John Hamer stuff.
Yeah,
and a lot of Book of Mormon.
A lot of Book of Mormon stuff. Yeah. So just learning. Okay.
And David Bokovoy was around that time.
Yeah. So David Bokovoy hadn't happened. Yet. Because I remember I bought the book by Grant Palmer, Restoring Christ. Restoring Christ. Yeah. Leaving Mormon Jesus for the Jesus of the Gospels. Because I thought, well, maybe Jesus still exists and is true or whatever. But yeah, big things for me was polygamy. Like I don't know why. Like, because we grew up knowing about Doctrine and Covenants 132. Why don't we make the connection about that and the fact that Joseph Smith lived polygamy? I don't know if it's because we never taught that, or just the extent to what Joseph Smith went to marry other women and women who were already married and teenage girls, and all this stuff that I had never heard about. Book of Abraham, revisiting Book of Abraham that I had put on the shelf. And a lot of it had what was me trying to unravel or deconstruct my testimony, which was built by Joseph Fielding Smith teachings, right? About the witnesses, how credible they were. And so I had to go, what about the witnesses? And then go and research about the witnesses. And there's problems there too. And what about the priesthood restoration? There's problems there too. Just every single truth claim has issues. Every big Mormon truth claim has
Book
issues.
Book of Mormon, Book of Abraham, witnesses, Joseph Smith,
Kinderhook blades. And I didn't know what the CS letter was at that point, but I already knew all the issues just by researching and watching Mormon stories. And Zach went through this really hard time of getting panic attacks sometimes while we were deconstructing our faith. Part of it maybe I think had to do with the fact that it was hard for him to lose his faith in the church and then be like, so then what? What happens after this life? We don't know. Is there a God? What's going to happen when I have a problem? Who am I going to pray to? And so it was really, really hard for him. He had at least 2 panic attacks, and
you feel like you're going to die. I mean, those aren't small things.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah. And he didn't tell his parents that he was going through a faith crisis, but he told them that he wanted to go therapy, and his mom told him he has to be family services. If you want us to pay for it, or you have to go to LDS Family Services. So he said, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that. And he ended up having a therapist, I think in Rexburg, who he was able to come out and tell her that we were dating, going through a faith crisis, and that we were both at BYU-Idaho, and the therapist was fine with it.
Kept his confidence.
Yep.
That's an ethical therapist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like, it's okay to be gay. He had a good experience with LDS Family Services, which I know that's not always the case. But yeah, we're going through this faith crisis, and then I decide I have to tell my parents, because I'm pretty mad at my parents at that point. It's like, I've gone through conversion therapy. I've been grilled about being gay, about having to follow the covenant path, and here is the prophet of the restoration, marrying other men's wives. But then the church just fighting same-sex marriage and saying that's evil from the devil. how come Joseph Smith gets a pass, but then homosexuality is this horrible, ugly, terrible thing? So I talked to my parent. I talked to my dad first, and I told him the whole thing. I told him I found this and this and this, and he heard me out for like 30 minutes, just ranting about all the issues I had found. And he just heard me, and he said, okay, you know, these new things, you're finding these new things. What I'm going to ask you is to stop researching. Just keep going to church, keep doing the stuff at BYU-Idaho that you and then graduate and then find out what you're going to do next. I got upset at him that I was expecting him to be like, okay, son, let's review the issues. I'll help you through it. I mean, when they found out I was gay, they found Evergreen, they found conversion therapy, they were researching all this stuff. Why, when I tell him, hey, I have all these issues with the church, why are you not helping me go out, look for resources?
So kind of do the research in the other direction.
Yeah.
They were only, maybe it appeared like they were only willing to do research in the faithful direction.
Right.
But not if the
well, I was not expecting him to, hey, Dad, go find out that the church is not true. I was like at least expecting him to go like, I'll help you out. I'll find answers for you. Like just like he had done when he found out I was gay.
Yeah.
But no, it was just crickets. Like just talked that one time and that's it. And he told me, don't tell your sister, don't tell your mom about it. But the fact that we didn't talk about it, but I was still watching Mormon Stories and all this stuff. 2 weeks passed and I was like, I got to tell my mom. So I called my mom and I told her, Mom, I found all these things.
Why would you say don't tell your mother?
I think it's just like you're going to contaminate just like other people with your doubts. I don't know. I think your sister is about to go on your mission. I don't know. My dad, I feel like he's always felt like he's a lot more faithful than my mom in some ways. Maybe he thought I'll be able to handle the questions or you ranting to me about these issues, but your mom may not be able to handle it as well. And I know that's what happened. Once I talked to my mom, we kind of fought on the phone about some of the issues, about the hat and the stone. It's like, you grew up in the church, you serve a mission. I served a mission. Had you ever heard about this hat and the stone? And she's like, no, never heard about it. But maybe it's because it was too sacred. It's too sacred. So the church doesn't really want to talk about it because people are going to make fun of it. It's like, but the church is giving us all this whole different story. Why lie? Why are they lying? These prophets in the past said like Joseph Fielding Smith said Joseph Smith did not use the seer stone for translating the Book of Mormon. So they're lying. And I mean, Joseph Fielding Smith was a church historian. He had all the records. He knew. And he denied it.
That was the first vision thing. I don't know if you knew about that at the time.
So the first vision, the first vision is like all these first vision accounts. They contradict each other. There was no a religious revolt or what's revival. There was no revival in 1820. Like that's proven. There was no revival in 1820. The revival Joseph Smith was talking about happened a lot later in
3 years after the first vision was supposed to have happened.
Right around the time Alvin died. What we have in our scriptures, Joseph Smith history says that Alvin died, and then how does it say it? I think it doesn't talk. Joseph Smith history does not talk about Alvin dying because it talks about his family converting to Presbyterianism, and then he goes and prays. So that happened in 1820. But really, his family didn't convert into the Presbyterianism until after Alvin died, and that didn't happen until 1823. That doesn't match.
Right. And no revival.
Right. Yeah. No, and no revival.
And no record of the.
No one talked about. And there's all these records of all these people talking a big thing on I love teaching the restoration on my mission. It was my favorite thing to teach because I would teach about history and about the great apostasy and how the Catholic Church rised and was the church of the devil. And I love teaching to people the fact that Joseph Smith was the first man to say he had seen God and Jesus. Because after the apostles died, no one claimed that. Everyone was saying that that God and Jesus went silent and the Bible is the only thing we had. But now I'm finding out there's all these people around Joseph Smith area that were talking about visions and seeing God. And
lots of people before Joseph Smith.
Right. Before Joseph Smith. Yeah.
Were claiming to have talked to God or had visitations from God or Jesus.
And Jesus.
So Joseph was just one of several dozen people. And he came later.
Yeah.
Who all claimed to have visitations from God.
And the first vision was not a big deal in the beginning of the church. Like when Joseph Smith was living, very few people knew about it. He was not really talking about it.
Wasn't part of the missionary discussion.
Even after he died, we have records of Wilford Woodruff, Brigham Young saying that the first vision was Moroni appearing to God, and that God and Jesus didn't come to earth to restore. Wilford Woodruff, I think it is, or Brigham Young saying God and Jesus did not come to restore the church. It was Moroni. So that proves that this whole first vision thing, they
made up later.
It was either made up later or because they knew a lot of people were seeing God and Jesus. It was not a big thing.
Yeah. Made into a big thing later.
Right. It was, and it evolved. It's a story that evolved. It starts with just Jesus, and then all of a sudden there's a pillar of light and God and Jesus, and Satan is there too.
It's like a story that gets...
and now Fiona Gibbons says that Mothering Heaven was there too. I don't know what they're going to say next, who was also there.
That's interesting that you said that you liked teaching the restoration on your mission, because didn't missionary efforts start really kicking up when they started introducing, because it wasn't until much, much later, right, that they started telling the first vision story as missionaries when they proselyted. That was the most successful way to get new converts, that you're able to tell this really cool story. And that hooked you in, hooked other people in.
And my patriarchal blessing specifically said that I would that the restoration was going to be the main thing that I would preach to people or something like that.
Yeah.
And that matched because I loved it. So I told all that to my mom, and she took it really hard. We didn't talk for a while, and later my dad said that she had a really, really hard time after that. And I think it was not just, oh, my son has lost his faith. I think she was also in some way kind of being
shaken up that you might have been telling the truth. These things are...
There's a lot of shocking information that she'd never heard in her life. And she knows, I don't know, my parents have been Orthodox Mormons my entire life.
She must know that you were a studious guy, that you were, she must have respected you enough to even let you finish telling her what your research was.
Yeah. She did push a lot back that my dad didn't. When I told him 2 weeks before, he didn't push back at all. Anyway, so,
and it probably is worth mentioning that, of course, here in the United States, we have an informed consent problem, but it's got to be even worse in Latin America in terms of just how few people know about this type of, I guess they have the internet, but if it's hard for a Utahn along the Wasatch Front, and there are literally 90% of the Mormon church along the Wasatch Front in 2021 has never heard of any of this. The essays, any of the podcasts, CES letter, still oblivious. It just, I would imagine it has to be way worse in a developing country in a different language.
You go from colonization to informed consent. I'm talking, that's a wide bridge to gap, right? Yeah. Colonization to informed consent. What are you going to do?
And a big thing I told him is we're not the Lamanites. We don't have any blood that ties us to Israel.
How did you arrive at that conclusion?
I found out that the church had changed the introduction to the Book of Mormon. I didn't know that.
To what? From what to what?
From that the American Indians were the principal ancestors of the Lamanites, and now it says that the American Indians are among the ancestors of the Lamanites.
And why'd they make that change?
Because DNA studies have proven that there's no connection between American Indians and Israel. It's what I was taught in school. We come from Asia. I mean, you go to Mexico, and the very native people, they do look a little Asian. But anyway, so.
Can I just ask about that? That is, for some reason, this is so near and dear to my heart. There's something that feels particularly violent or wrong about, and it's so weird because you described it in the beginning of your interview as being something that Mexican Mormons loved, being told that they had a history and that they were connected to these people, the pure blood of Israel, and their Lamanites and their descendants of the Nephites and the Lamanites. Like, you described that as being special and made people feel pride and meaning and purpose. As I, for some reason now, feel like that's super insidious to manufacture an identity, you know, and then to impose that on a group of vulnerable people. And instead of telling them where they really came from or helping them discover for themselves where they really come from, giving them a false, manufactured, fictitiously, superstitiously constructed identity, and then having them associate with that and feel pride from it. For some reason, that feels just really offensive and violent now. And
It feels that way for me. Because my whole life, I live in Merida. We have some of the best Mayan pyramids and ruins nearby. Chichen Itza is like an hour and a half from my home. Tulum, 3 hours. And I grew up thinking like this were the Lamanites. Like, oh, this means that. And look, they had like a celestial temple, and then telestial and terrestrial. They had these 3 temples, and look how it compares to the temple today. And
there's a serpent, and there's the tree of life.
Yeah, and Jesus is Quetzalcoatl, and yeah.
And what's wrong with that now that you're discovering your real, authentic, native heritage? What's wrong or violent about?
Well, they gave us a fake narrative, an American made-up fake narrative of who we are, and having to grow up, having to always trying to make every little piece of information that you hear about your heritage, and having to try to make it fit into what you know about the Book of Mormon and Mormonism in general.
What's wrong with that?
I just think I don't know. It's just wrong. I just think it's wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be like telling me that my parents were someone else's parents when they weren't my parents.
Right.
Like, how awful. Imagine how it would be. My parents are Dave and Nan, and being told my parents are Bill and Sue, and my whole life believing that my parents are different than who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
That would be awful. And it's not just your parents, but your whole cultural, genetic ancestry and your identity going back. And by the way, we don't have to belabor this point, but the whole mound builder narrative that the Book of Mormon, that Joseph Smith just literally just plagiarized and adopted into the Book of Mormon, is a super racist narrative that wasn't original to Joseph Smith. It was the way that we as colonizers of the American frontier justified genocide by displacing the Native Americans, kicking them out, killing them, slaughtering them, infecting them with our diseases, so that literally millions of Native Americans died of disease and famine and war from North to South America, right? We had to justify that violence, that displacement, and that colonialism. So we had to dehumanize them, and we had to balance that with all the beautiful ruins and the art and the relics and the language and the culture. It's not a small thing to develop a native language. I learned this reading Guns, Germs, and Steel. There are only a handful of civilizations that independently developed written language, right?
Yep.
It's like the Sumerians and the Egyptians and freaking the Mayans. Like there are only a few, and you guys did it. And you had a calendar, and you had a language, and you had math and a numbering system. You had way better agriculture than the Europeans did.
Mm-hmm.
So many incredible advances in art and civilization. But like, since we were killing you all and displacing you, we had to dehumanize you. So we come up with this mound builder myth that, oh, well, all these incredible ruins, it couldn't have been dark people that did this because we're killing all those people and they're subhuman. So there must have been a light race of natives who did all this cool advanced stuff, and they must have been killed off by the dark people.
Yeah.
And that was just for a couple hundred years before Joseph Smith. That's the way that we justified the genocide we were committing on you guys. And so Joseph brings that into the Book of Mormon, and today we're all like, oh my gosh, what a wonderful thing.
What
Wow,
a unique thing.
That's so creative.
How could
and
anyone
unique.
think about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But part of what's so awful about it, and Michael Coe helped me realize this, is that to call Native Americans dark and loathsome and lazy and slothful, the opposite is true. They were hardworking, creative, smart geniuses. And so here you are, Gerardo, this brilliant, young, promising kid, being told your super ancestors were made dark and loathsome because of their wickedness, when really your ancestors were sophisticated badasses that just unfortunately got slaughtered by guns, germs, and steel that the Europeans brought over because of you were at the wrong latitude or longitude, given the animals and the territories that you guys lived in. You weren't able to develop the same level of civilization that they were, not because of their intelligence or your intelligence, but because of what animals were available to them and what diseases they were able to develop immunities to, so that then they could infect you. Like, it's just it's such an outrageous thing to teach you that your ancestors are ignorant, dark, and loathsome and lazy, when really they were brilliant and sophisticated.
Yeah.
Amen.
To me, that's part of why it's violent. What's that?
I just said amen to that. Guns, Germs, and Steel. It's a good book. Yeah. It's the answer to a lot of what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't mean to put all that on you, but that's how I process
agree.
it.
I agree 100%. And just a few months, I think last year, I called my mom, because sometimes when you have lost your faith in the church, you lose track of all the stuff you used to believe, and you forget that there's people that still believe it. So I called my mom on the phone, I think it was last year, and I said, Mom, is it your understanding that the reason why my skin is dark, or like any Mexican person, their skin is black or dark, is because we are descendants from the Lamanites who were cursed with dark skin? Is that your understanding? And she said, yeah. People still believe it.
Oh, yeah. But then Mormon apologists in the United States are like, we never taught that. No one's
Right.
ever taught that. There's a difference between the curse and the mark of the curse, and they have some contorted justification. The Book of Mormon is not racist. It's never been racist.
It's about
Where did you get that idea?
countenance.
Where did your mom get that idea?
And then the
Gerardo?
Book of Mormon Central, who is receiving money from the church, and on their website, they say they receive money from the church. They're telling people in Mexico that they're descendants from the Lamanites.
Yeah, still.
Yeah.
How do you unring that bell, right?
Yeah. But I think the biggest and the thing that made me mad the most was polygamy. Joseph went against everything that he wrote on his own revelations in Doctrine and Covenants 132. He married other men's wives. He married
means they're not
mother-daughter
virgins.
pairs. Yeah, non-virgins, mother-daughter pairs. He went against all his revelations, and he hid it from Emma.
She was like the 17th wife or something.
20 something. He was 20 something. Yeah.
Forget that, everybody, that Joseph got sealed to his first wife like 23 wives in.
Yeah.
And he kept it from her until then, and only brought her in once she discovered he was hiding and lying about all these other marriages. Makes no sense. And the Doctrine and Covenants says that the first wife is supposed to approve all the subsequent wives.
Yeah.
So that clearly didn't happen.
And today, a Mormon bishop if you kiss the guy, he will go and tell you you can't take the sacrament, and you can't do all these things, and you are on probation. But then we give a pass to Joseph. Most of Mormon unique doctrines of Mormonism came after Joseph started practicing polygamy and after he started marrying other men's wives. So why do we believe anything he said after that? Didn't he lose his spirit?
So
The spirit,
like the 3 degrees of glory, the
Right.
endowment, the temple ceremony, baptisms for the dead, all that stuff comes after.
Word of
he's already-
wisdom?
Word of wisdom is before.
Oh, and that in 30 something, right?
I mean,
33?
maybe Fanny Alger, but,
Yeah.
but I mean, most of that new Nauvoo doctrine comes
Yeah.
after he had already started full on polygamy. And so if he's a fallen prophet, I think I hear what you're saying is
Yeah.
if polygamy made Joseph a fallen prophet, which a lot of progressives tend to think,
Yeah.
then why would any of his modern revelations coming after that be valid? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And if they're valid, why are we grilling people who commit sexual sins today? Why don't we give them the same pass as Joseph? Be like, oh, you did this wrong. It's fine. Just keep going. Keep coming to church. You still have the spirit. You're fine. Just maybe don't do it again or whatever.
So what, some just believe, well, God like Kwaku, God commanded it. So if God tells you to marry girls, you're going to marry girls. Because
If you want to believe that Joseph went again his own revelation, I mean, whatever you think, I don't know. I just don't know how to, I can't convince you otherwise.
Yeah.
If you can't see how bad it was that he was marrying other men's wives behind Emma's back, what God commands that from anyone? I mean, if he was 1, 2, 3, 4 wives, 5, maybe.
That's okay, right, Kara? If it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, or
Yeah.
5.
If I was Emma, I'd be like, I'm cutting it off at 20, please.
I could maybe still believe that, yeah, God was sending angels with drawn swords to command him to keep marrying, but almost 40 wives? Why was that necessary? And the fact that I was taught by my mission president, by every leader in the church, that polygamy was lived to take care of the widows and take care of the women who were left after the war.
When there were more men
Right.
who were single than women.
Yeah. Right.
It's also just, sometimes we don't mention this, but the fact that how convenient it is in D&C 132 that God's telling Emma she'll be smitten and destroyed if she doesn't allow Joseph to keep practicing polygamy. How can you interpret that as anything other than an egregious abuse of unrighteous dominion?
Right.
To threaten Emma with eternal death and damnation if she doesn't let Joseph keep sleeping around, in effect.
Right.
That's pretty coercive and abusive. Unless that's the God you believe in.
Right. Like Kwaku, which cool dude. Keep believing that God. I'm fine with it. Anyway, so went through a really hard time. Faith crisis for the whole year. I was obsessed with Mormonism and Mormon stuff. And it got to this point, like 6 months before graduating, I had 1 semester left. We started getting very nervous, especially me. What happens if we get caught? I only have 1 semester left. If we get caught, that would mean that I would lose my student status. Just as soon as I get kicked out, I lose my visa status. I have to go back to Mexico. I think I have like 72 hours to go back to Mexico right after I get kicked out. If not 48, I can't remember. And it had happened to a friend of mine, so I knew how it worked. So we started getting really nervous, and we decided that the best thing, we were already engaged, that the best thing was going to be getting married. Because if we got married, that would mean even if I got kicked out, I could still stay in the country and then fix the paperwork after being get kicked out for staying in the U.S. Because if I got kicked out and had to move to Mexico, getting a fiancé visa, marriage visa, those take forever, sometimes years. And yeah, it's just going to be really hard. So we decided it was a super fast decision. I was going into LA for a work trip, and we decided, let's just elope, and you meet me here in LA and we'll get married. So the day before our marriage, I was there. Zach was still in Idaho, and I went and bought us clothes, bought us both shirts, like matching shirts, this cute linen shirts. And I found a place in LA where a little chapel that we could get married, elope. So we did it, and he came the next day. Oh, sorry, that night I think he arrived, and then the next morning it was super cute. We went to the beach that morning, and then our friend who we were staying with drove us, who also studied at BYU-Idaho and was my roommate at some point. He had already graduated. He was presented himself as straight while at BYU-Idaho, but then when he moved to California, he came out. So we were staying with him. He drove us to the beach, and then drove us to the chapel, and we got married. He was the only one there, and
Was it bittersweet?
yeah.
What was the sweet and what was the bitter?
The sweet was a cute moment. Like I love Zach, and I was happy for our decision and doing this together, and it was just a cute little ceremony. It's a little sad, the fact that we couldn't tell our parents. We couldn't tell anyone. We had to keep it a secret. And yeah. I'm sorry. At one point later, I talked to my mom and I told her, like, do you think it was that I wouldn't have wanted you to be at my wedding ceremony? Like, just like any other normal person, but I had to do it because, to protect myself, protect Zach, and protect the fact that we wanted to be together. So yeah, it's great. This was we got married a year after we got engaged. And went back to BYU-Idaho. We were living at the same place and just finished my last semester. I was spending minimum time in Rexburg because I was working in Idaho Falls. So I would just be in Rexburg for classes and then going to sleep and working in Idaho Falls. And then graduation came. I didn't walk. I just wanted to be out of there as fast as possible.
And by this time you were emailing me and
Yeah.
we were in contact.
Yeah, I think
is it the same Young March you came to, or you came to
I came to Thrive in November. Yeah, we came to Thrive. We met you, took a picture with you. Yeah, and I had already emailed you about kind of our story a couple months before Thrive.
Right. That's right. You made it out.
Yeah, made it out. So this part of how my parents found out, I told them. I called it was like I still had 2 months before graduation, and I called my mom. And I told my mom, what would you, because she was a BYU-Idaho student online. She went through the Pathway program, and she had finished BYU-Idaho. I think she had already graduated. So I asked her, what would you do if you knew that I was doing something to break the honor code? Like, would you tell me? And she's like, well, you're already telling me you did something, so you might as well tell me what you did. And I think she was like, and no, I would not tell you. So it's like, well, I'm married to Zach. And she just went quiet for a little, and she said, well, we kind of already suspected a little. And they knew we lived together. I had taken him to Mexico the year before. And she was already, I think what helped a lot was that I had talked to them about my faith crisis several months before. So they were already prepared that something like that was going to come sooner or later. She took it pretty good, I think. I mean, she was not thrilled and like, oh, congratulations or anything like that. I think she said, I'll talk to your dad about it. Because I said, should I talk to my dad or do you want to tell him? And she said, I'll talk to him. But then I decided to just call my dad. And I asked him the same question. Like, what would you do if I tell you that I did something? And would you tell me? He said, he said, just tell me already. What did you do? So I said, okay. So I married Zach. And
This is before you graduated.
2 months and a half before I graduated. So it was risky.
Yeah.
What made you feel like you had to tell them? Is just keep it in?
Oh my gosh, we've been dating for so long, engaged for so long.
You were married.
Yeah.
And we were married already, and not being able to tell them was just killing me. I had already told them about my faith crisis.
And you're pretty close to your parents. I mean, your mom.
Yeah, we would talk.
Right?
We would talk
Weekly.
Yeah.
Can you
banking on that.
imagine being married, talking to your mom or parents weekly, and having to hide that from them for how long?
A year and 8 months.
Talking to them weekly.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go home and cry into my pillow of my straight privilege right now. That sucks, man.
Yeah, it's hard.
So my dad told me, okay, so now you have to go and do the right thing and go to tell your bishop.
Oh shoot.
I was like, you already know I don't believe in the church. I didn't tell him this, but I'm just thinking, you already know I don't believe in the church at all. You're expecting me to go to the bishop?
Throw your degree away.
Right.
Get kicked out of the country.
Right. So I said, I'm not going to go to the bishop. And I got mad and I think I hanged up. And we didn't talk much after that. And then I graduated.
But they didn't turn you in.
Yeah. Something my dad did say is like, when you graduate, please delete everyone on social media that has ties to us here in Mexico. So I don't want anyone from here, from our country, to find out that you are same-sex married. I don't want my family to find out. I don't want the war, the stake. No, I don't want anyone to find out. And that kind of also made me upset. But I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just hanged up. Zach and I planned.
How'd that make you feel, though?
Made me feel sad. And I'm pretty, I could say I'm pretty prideful. Like when I know something, I'm going to do something, like I'm going to do it no matter what they tell me. So it did make me feel bad that he would say something like that, but it didn't make me think twice if I should do it or not. I knew that was the first thing I wanted to do once I was out of Rexburg, come out and make it public.
Yeah, good for you.
And in some way, show, look, we're not this perfect family who you all guys thought we were. Yeah. And
yeah, the Mormon mask of the perfect family with problems underneath extends to Mexico. That's not just a Utah thing.
right.
The fake appearance-based Mormon. Not that your family's awful, but every family's got problems.
Yeah.
There's this focus on appearance and making everything look perfect. Mm-hmm. That's a thing in Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, surprise, there's LGBTQ people in Mexico too. Surprise, conversion therapy doesn't work for Mexicans either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Zach and I planned to have a trip right after graduation, go to Disney World for Christmas, because we knew, well, we can't go to Mexico for Christmas. And Zach hasn't told his parents that he is married or that he has lost his faith. And we can tell them because I don't have my degree. My degree is not posted yet. So his mom could still go to the school.
And I think we were talking about this offline. People don't understand, who aren't connected to BYU, that if BYU finds out before you actually receive your degree that you've done something wrong, violated the honor code, they have a history of withholding your degree and not letting you graduate.
Right.
So that people have to literally go to some other university, try and transfer credits, and then actually pay the extra expense, pay the extra time, and try and graduate through another university. Because literally, BYU has held people's diploma after students have met all the criteria to graduate once they've learned that someone violated the honor code. BYU, the Mormon Church, has done that and still does that.
Yeah.
So you had to wait until the degree was posted.
So what Zach did was...
I'm just giving the evil eye to the church right now.
Give the stink eye to the church on that.
I just am thinking about there's this TikTok account called like We TikTok of Christ, and it's like, does the LDS Church hate gay people? No. And it's like a minute of apologetics.
Well, as soon as you do what they want you to do, they don't hate you.
Yeah, like they withhold your degree because after you would graduate, goodness gracious.
After you meet all the
Painful.
criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had to wait.
Yeah. So he told his parents, I'm going to go to Disney World for Christmas, but I can't tell you who I'm going with. That's what he told his parents. This was huge. Like his family's super close. They get together for Christmas every year. Like all the grandparents, like not being at home for Christmas, like that devastated his parents. They already knew something was wrong by that point. And Disney World was great. We loved it. It was super fun. And while we were there, my degree was posted online. So he told his parents while we were there. He wrote this long letter, sent it to them, and told them, please read everything. Don't respond. Wait 24 hours, think about it, and then respond. The first thing his mom does is start texting him like crazy, just mad and like super bad stuff, like Satan is guiding you and you're on Satan's clutches, and just please come back home, and just you can't do this to us. And it was just a really big bomb to throw all at once, I feel. But I mean, how else? There was no other way to do it.
How was that for Zach, and how was that for you?
It was hard. Super sad to watch. His mom broke his heart. It got to be so bad that at one point his mom was texting him all these horrible things, and I grabbed my phone and texted his dad and told him, like, you should talk to your wife, because suicide is a real thing, and what your wife is doing is just horrible. And I think he did talk to her, but I mean, that just made her more mad. He just texted him like, tell Gerardo to stop telling your dad that I'm whatever, to be kind of like get him in between this. And I don't know, it just made it worse. I don't know. But after that, she did stop. The text stopped. And just crickets after that. And what has hurt Zach the most is he grew up not having many friends, and his best friends were his cousins who live in Utah and are members of the church, and his aunts, and loved. He always felt like, even though they didn't know he was gay, that he was able to be who he was with them, and they were accepting and didn't judge him for being feminine or being different. But after she told them that he was married to me, it was the same, just Mormon crickets. We stopped being invited to, we were not invited to family meetings or family gatherings, or I mean, before they found out this, when every time Zach would come to Utah, he would be invited to their house. He would see them all the time. And all of a sudden we live here in Utah, just a few miles away from them, and he doesn't hear anything from them. And yeah, it's been hard for him. And it's been hard for me too, because I sometimes feel that I am part of that. I've been part of that because since I came out on social media and graduated from BYU-Idaho, I've been more vocal on social media about truth claim stuff and just stuff about the church and being more critical about it. And I think that has caused that hasn't made it better, but he still supports me. Yeah.
And why are you vocal?
Because
Why not just be quiet and go away?
Mormonism was my life. I gave 2 years to this institution. And my parents will never see me the same way they see my sister, for example, or his parents will never see him the same way than if he had married a woman. This institution has really affected our lives in so many different ways, and even though we're happy, we're super happy. We love our life, but we've been affected and still affected by this organization, which in some ways I still love, and I'm fascinated by it, but at the same time it just has hurt us so much. And people are gonna say, like, how has it hurt you? Like, you ended up with a degree from the university
In the United States.
Yeah, you're right.
You're bilingual. You're
Right.
financially relatively very successful.
Right. And like I said, we're happy. We have a successful life right now, living the American dream. But again, it's just the one of the most important relationships that you can have as a human is with your parents and your family, and that'll never be the same, and it's all because of this, because of the church. Yeah. Anyway, so my parents have come around like 180 degrees. Like, so they're at a point where I never thought they would be. They've come and stayed with us for last Christmas and New Year's. My mom stayed with us for like 3 weeks, and then my dad came and stayed with us for like a week for New Year's.
Yeah, and that's you and Zach living together as husband and husband, and they're staying with you.
Yeah.
That's it seems like they've gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought they would be at this point that fast.
Don't they treat Zach pretty well?
Oh, they love him. Yeah. My mom loves Zach.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And it helped a lot that they came this last Christmas, and my mom lived with us for 3 weeks, and she was able to see our relationship. And in some ways, how our relationship is better than theirs. Yeah. 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 She's told me and written me this beautiful text after staying with us that it really helped her heal and see things that she doesn't have in her own relationship, and how happy she is that we love each other and love each other. And my dad was just the same. He's happy for us. One of the things one night Zach had gone to sleep, and I was just talking to my parents, and one of the nights they were staying here, and my dad told me he started crying a little bit and said, one of the things I regret the most is not have learned English, because I can communicate with Zach, and that's one of the things that I would have wanted to do, to be able to communicate with him and tell him that I love him. He asked us to bless the house because we just bought a new house and that's where they stayed. We all kneeled and he blessed the house for no. He said something really interesting. He said, so that no bad spirits could enter the house that could put distance between me and Zach.
It's kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you feel?
It's great. Yeah. It's awesome.
He's blessing that your relationship is strong, right?
Yeah.
And he must not believe that there's already bad spirits between you already. He's kind of sanctioned this gay union in a way.
Yeah, 100%. And he has been able to work out his mind, his theology, with the fact that Zach and I are married and happy. And what he has said is, on the Book of Mormon, he talks about that we're saved by grace after all we can do. And I've seen that you did all you could do. And the Lord will justify you. Even though I don't believe in the Book of Mormon anymore.
He pulled out some good parts,
just
though.
the fact that he has gone that far, it really means a lot to me. And Zach's parents are a lot better. Still not the same, but he's still hurt a lot by his extended family, specifically on his mom's side, of not taking it the way he maybe thought they would. He really thought at one point that his aunts and cousins were the ones that were going to be accepting and loving, and that his mom was going to learn from them, and that through them his mom was going to be able to come around. But it has been the opposite. It's been kind of like his aunts are seeing how much they can condone by first waiting to see how the mom his mom reacts, kind of like trying to get the permission first and not get in trouble. I mean, all family relationships are different. I don't know. I still blame the church for that. And yeah, just the last thing. Recently, Zach made you made that video, that TikTok video about us and about Ty Callister. And recently, and I shared it. Zach saw it and shared it on his social media, and he received this text from one of his cousins telling him pretty much like, I just don't understand. If I don't post anti-gay stuff, why do you have to come against my church? If I love you and respect you, why can't you do the same for me? And Zach wrote this really beautiful thing where he said, you will never understand how it feels to have your own mom not ever look at you the same way that she will look at your siblings, or that you, every time you want to talk to your siblings, you have to have authorization from your mom and make sure your mom is okay with it, or that your grandma, Zach's grandparents from his mom's side have completely shunned him since he came out. And he had a beautiful relationship with his grandparents before. He loved his grandparents. Specifically, it was from his mom's side. He loves both, but and when he came out, they completely shunned him, not talk to him one word. Yeah, he told her, like, you're never gonna understand what that feels like. What it feels like, you're never gonna be able to talk to your grandma, and grandma is never gonna smile at you again. and this is all because of what the church has taught them.
And continues to teach.
Right. Yeah, his cousin was like, well, leaders are wrong, and sometimes they can be wrong and say bad things, but why do we kind of like need to talk about it? Why do you have to be criticizing the church? I mean, I don't know. It's affecting my life. So, yeah.
I mean, not only did it affect your entire life and framed your entire life, and I mean, this whole interview is a testament to how the church helped you, but also really hurt you. And, you know, if there's an abusive spouse who's done good things but is super abusive, does that let the abusive spouse off the hook? No. If they beat their wife, they're still accountable, even if they also got her lots of gifts and bought her a pretty house or a pretty wedding ring. Like, abusers aren't let off the hook for their abuse by the nice things they also did. In fact, most abusers can be super nice. So yeah, you don't get a pass for the damage you've done by the good things you've done, first of all. But second of all, silence is the killer. And it's not like you're just attacking the church neutrally because you don't like their beliefs. They're literally attacking you guys, denying, invalidating your life choices, calling you dangerous, calling you part of Satan's plan. Are you not allowed to respond? Are you literally supposed to stay silent and quiet and let them speak publicly in abusive ways that allows this ripple effect of LGBT harm to continue generation after generation after generation? And you're just supposed to stay silent about that because it might hurt someone's feelings?
Yeah.
Like, how is that right?
Yeah. How's
that fair? How's that reasonable?
And I messaged her after Zach told me about it. I told her, I would just have a question. How many suicides of members of the church do you know that they've died by suicide because someone criticizing the church?
Yeah, how many Orthodox Mormons have died by suicide because somebody said something mean on TikTok? You know what I mean?
Right.
None.
But how many suicides do you know of LGBT kids dying by suicide because of what the church teaches to them, to their families, and their families ostracizing them because of what the church taught them or teaches them? I know of at least 10 recent. Yeah.
Over the years, there's been thousands.
Right.
Thousands.
Right. Yeah. This is just me. Like, I'm not looking out there, hey, who committed suicide?
I mean,
who died by suicide?
By the way, 9/11, what, 3,000 people died?
Yeah.
And that's like one of the worst events ever in the United States history.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a decade or less within Mormonism for LGBT suicides.
Right.
Now, if we count 4 decades, it's probably in the tens of thousands.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we never know what contributing factors go into any old Mormon suicide, whether teen or grown up. You never know what things people are struggling with and what factors and teachings led them to take their own life.
Well, especially because of the culture of silence, where so many people die by suicide, and you just make the Mormon funerals are famous for like pretending like nothing bad ever happened, and they were super faithful, and they died loving the Lord. And
then the funeral is talking all about
death.
We talk about plan of salvation only, and just about how good members of the church they were, and
we hide the real causes. So who knows the number is what we're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know it's in the thousands to tens of thousands.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this lady that's organizing the EFY, I saw she had a video where she talks about the suicide of a girl, super recent, who was LGBT, and she left a note saying, "I'm dying by suicide because I know my family will not accept me." Yeah. So, it happens, and I don't understand. And Zach did tell her, like, how did it make you feel when your family your friends who are contributing and paying tithing to a church who is fighting against LGBT rights constantly, legally, putting a lot of money into not passing bills or passing bills that harm LGBT people. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. But yeah, so anyway, that was recent, and but my parents are good. They're great.
And we don't want to kind of rush over. I mean, your mom had told you that really awful thing at
Right.
the beginning, that you won't be my son anymore, basically.
Right.
What an amazing turnaround. And that your dad's coming around. Like, we can't just blow that off. Like, that's amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's not because of the church.
It's in spite of the church.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd hope that like the family first ideas around Mormonism, families are forever. Sometimes it can go in the wrong way where you're not going to be part of our eternal family anymore if you choose to marry a man and choose to not live on the covenant path. And I hope that the best things about Mormonism are the family first plaques that people have in their houses, you know, that they will remember that family comes before this institution, and to like love first and be an ally to your child, their spouse, that there are things that come before having their allegiance to this $100 billion organization sometimes. So that's really beautiful that your parents were able to make that kind of progression.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a very unique way to progress too, because it's one thing to say, okay, I tolerate you and I love you no matter what. And it's a different thing where I feel like they are at where they celebrate our marriage. Right. And which that's not happening on Zach's side, at least the part of his family, the mom's side of his family. And it just feels very different. And you can tell, you can feel it. No matter how many times this Orthodox people tell us that they love us, no matter what, you know,
We love
that
gay people.
You know that in the back of their mind, they still believe to the core that same-sex marriage is of the devil. So, yeah,
That's not love.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard because it puts you us in a position where, like, because I can see their frustration. I could see his cousin frustration of saying, "I'm frustrated that you don't believe me when I say I love you." But I think it comes more to the fact that you can tell me you love me, but the fact that you believe my marriage is counterfeit, that just doesn't do it for me.
It doesn't feel like love.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it really comes back to, I was saying a few years ago, I didn't, when you accept that the church is true and you accept the proclamation of the family, it's so difficult. In my mind, it was impossible for me to believe that God would sanction this marriage. I'm just trying to put myself back into where these people were at. And that, yeah, you're not doing it the way that Adam and Eve did it. You're doing it this alternative way. And it's just too difficult to accept any way but God's way. That's the one way that he defined marriage. And if you're living outside of that, you're living in sin, de facto sin. And just to tell them that you can still believe in a God who did that, but it also doesn't mean I can change my sexuality. It doesn't mean I can marry a woman. It doesn't mean I can be celibate. Like, even if you believe that, there's no way that I can change my sexuality. I wish Mormons could just really get that into their hearts and their heads. I came around.
Also, a shout out, a reference to the resource on Latter-Gay Stories. Kyle Ashworth put together a PDF called For the Record. And it's this amazing history of the church's dealings with the LGBTQ people. And he's even updated it to include the latest stuff. But even if you don't even care about LGBT people and you just want to see how inconsistent and harmful the church leaders have been on an issue, and how much they've contradicted themselves and been all over the place and said really horrendous things and caused so much harm. It can help you in your journey just to read the history. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes for the record at Latter-Gay Stories. Everyone's got to read that, gay or not, straight or not.
Yeah.
All right. Final thoughts before we close, Gerardo?
I don't know. Thanks, John, for letting me be on Mormon Stories and letting me tell my story. And I hope I didn't make anyone too bored.
Well, I've done 2,000 hours worth of these things, and I wasn't bored. So hopefully, I know our listeners are going to love it too. Kara, were you bored?
Not at all. I have a lot to repent for post-Mormon as a recovering homophobe. So I had so much to learn, and I have never sat in this long-form interview with hearing somebody's story start to finish about their gay upbringing gay upbringing is not the way, Mormon upbringing as a gay person, and understanding and trying to find empathy in places that I couldn't have found 3 years ago, So it makes me kind of want to take back some things that I would have said or thought about people that I should have been a better ally to back in my Mormon days. So I'm definitely inspired. Thanks for telling your story, Gerardo.
Yeah. And like Maya Angelou said in her wisdom, when you know better, you do better. So we can all learn through this and do better. And thank you, Gerardo. I mean, silence really is the killer. Silence is the enabler for multi-generational dysfunction. So you being willing to speak out, tell your story, not be silent, not be chased away into silence, is going to help thousands and thousands and thousands of gay, straight, trans, people either live healthier, happier lives themselves or treat their LGBTQ loved ones with more kindness and love and respect.
Yeah,
and that's all because you're willing to tell your story.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kara, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been super fun
I loved
to have you as co-pilot.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Yeah, it's been great. And Gerardo, thanks for this beautiful cinematography that you've given not just me and us, but our listeners. Thank you so much. You've really helped us up our game. So thanks again. And thanks to Zach and all the family members mentioned today, and hope you guys are going to be okay. And just thanks to all the listeners. Thanks to all the supporters. We love you guys. Be good to each other. Thanks for everyone who supports us on Mormon Stories. Support us if you can at mormonstories.org. Become a donor if you're not one already. We'd really appreciate that. And we'll provide you with more content. But most of all, love each other. Be kind to each other. Stay tuned in the future, not just on Mormon Stories podcast, but on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. We're trying to meet you wherever you are, but please stay in touch. Keep supporting us. Be good to each other. And we'll see you guys all again very soon on another episode of Mormon Stories podcast. Take care, everybody.